I should know better than to count on the future. All you can ever believe in is now, this moment. Because in a blink, everything can change.
You should have killed me. That line, it killed me the first time I heard Yvonne say it at the read-through. I mean, sitting there at the read-through, everyone felt gut punched. The whole cast had no idea where this was going. Dexter finally giving Deborah that poison pen that killed Sal Price, giving Deborah the woman that you could credibly argue is the love of Dexter's life. And we know that Dexter isn't the type of guy who gets more than one chance at that, right? It was heartbreaking. Woo! Welcome to the Dexter Wrap-Up Podcast, our 11th one for episode 711, Do You See What I See? Written by Manny Cotto and Wendy West, directed by John Dahl. I'm Scott Reynolds. I'm one of the writer-producers here on Dexter. I'll be your host, and damn it, do we have a podcast for you today. I mean, after seeing that episode, did you ever think in a million years that you would see America's favorite serial killer finally actually fall in love with someone as incredible as Hannah? I mean, they really seem like the perfect pair. It's like that age-old tale of the scorpion and the frog. The only thing you know for sure is that the scorpion is going to sting you sometime or other. I mean, I guess this parable was more like, I don't know, the scorpion and the Gila monster or something. But Dexter realizing that Hannah poisoned his sister, we knew a long time ago that if push comes to shove, he'll choose Deborah over blood, with Brian Moser, the Estra killer. And now we know he'll choose her over love. And to do it in a garden, a final kiss, just like Judas in the Garden of the Gethsemane, it's brutal. Dexter's quickly learning that being human, I don't know, it sort of sucks. Everything can change in the blink of an eye, as he said. All the more heartbreaking when you consider what happened at the top of the episode with Dexter imagining a life, a future with Hannah. Even Harrison, all grown up, 17 years old. I mean, it was as near as possible as a perfect family for these guys, and all for naught. And yeah, how about that unsubtle hurt threat from Hannah when the cop showed up at the Hannah Flora nursery, and she looked at him and said, "You should have killed me." Poor Hannah, poor Dexter. Now look, honestly, we could talk about this episode for hours, but let's face it, we're not here to listen to me do this. We're here to hear all about Dexter from the man himself, Michael C. Hall. And he's got a lot to say about this episode. It's a pivotal one after, last episode 710, where he no longer believes in the dark passenger. Dexter's never done anything like this before. And it's going to be fun to hear him talk about his relationship with Deborah, with Hannah, with all things Dexter. So if you don't mind, let's just go to the source. Hey, we're sitting here with Michael C. Hall.
Hello there. Hello.
How you doing, man?
I'm well. It's the first day of temporary freedom. We shot the last day of the 7th episode yesterday. So
you said you feel like a great weight.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty palpable when we wrapped yesterday. I felt some invisible black dog get off my shoulders.
It's got to be a crazy relief. But then everywhere you go, like I had this weird moment even driving here today, where I'm driving along, and has it happened to you, where you're in your car, you look to your left, and suddenly there you are staring at you from a bus?
Yeah.
Has that happened?
Yeah, many times. Actually, I think the 710 on the way to and from Long Beach, where we shoot all the time, is as plastered with Dexter billboards as any place in LA. So yeah, it's
gonna be a weird experience.
It's odd. I mean, I'm thankful, that it's that time of year again.
Yeah.
It's nice to be in something that the powers that be are encouraging people to watch.
It's weird that it's not. I always thought, and I think you did too at one point, that this would just sort of be like a cult show.
Yeah.
And it's been embraced by a much larger.
A really big cult. Yeah. People, all kinds of people, age-wise, race-wise.
My mom's a
political stripe-wise.
Yeah. It's weird. My mom's a preacher or a pastor or something,
wow.
and she likes it.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah, well, there's the Old Testament.
It's very Old Testament. So this whole acting thing, how'd you get into all this? We talk a little bit about that, yeah?
I think I did my first play when I was like in 2nd grade in a church.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was called What Love Is, and it was about a guy who asks to be visited, or he asks Yeah, he asked to be visited by God. He asks an angel,
Oof.
and she says, "I'll take care of it," and she leaves. And over the course of the night, he's visited by 3 people in different stages of need,
Yeah.
and he helps them, and he's increasingly begrudging in his help. And at the end, he calls upon the angel and says, "Come on, God never showed up, just these people." And she says, "No, God was there every time," and that's the lesson of the play. What Love Is, it was called.
Wow.
But I was the guy.
You were the one looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yeah, exactly. And the feeling I had when it ended, when the director grabbed my cheeks and said, "You were brilliant," and it was a real quickening. And I think I kept it to myself. I don't think I really admitted to anyone, or even fully admitted to myself, that it's what I wanted to do until I was like in college.
Huh.
But I continued to perform here and there, plays, community theater stuff. I also did other things. I played sports, but I think
You
I
were
realized,
well-rounded.
Yeah, I mean, seemingly, but really just an empty shell. But
That's one of my favorite. You ever remember that PBS? It was Christopher Walken. Where he played this. It was this movie where he was "Who Am I This Time?" Did you ever see this thing? It was about acting, and that was his thing. He couldn't be anything until he got on stage, and the rest of his life he sort of felt like an empty shell.
Yeah,
which was so weird and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a part of what it feels like when the show ends. It's like, no more preoccupation with Dexter. I guess it's time to reacquaint myself with myself.
Yeah.
Whoever that is.
I'm sure it's pleasant.
I appreciate your certainty.
So college, you were saying, was
so college, I took an acting class and realized that it turned me on more than anything else. I was studying.
Where'd you go?
I went to Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. It's a tiny little Quaker school, and got a BA in theater.
Yeah.
I dabbled in majoring in all kinds of things, and
Sure.
it became clear that the only thing I could get away with majoring in and graduating in 4 years would be to major in theater, because I'd done so many plays. And then I got into grad school, and I went to grad school, the MFA program at NYU. So that's what
I've heard of that place.
That's what brought me to New York, and that was like a 3-year sort of intensive, more conservatory-esque training program, and it gave me a chance to live in New York without having to immediately make it happen for myself as an actor.
Because you're from the South, right? So
Yeah,
is that
North Carolina.
So you go from North Carolina to Indiana to New York City.
Yeah, I mean, Richmond, Indiana was exotic to me. I've
been there.
Going anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then, New York. I'd taken a little school trip to New York in 1986. I guess I was in, what was that, 8th grade or 9th grade? Yeah, my freshman year. And it kind of lodged itself in my brain as a place I hope to find an excuse to end up. And so I worked my way to that.
New York City's amazing.
Yeah.
And so that you got on stage there a lot, apparently.
Yeah. There was a training program for the stage, and my first jobs were playing small parts and understudying the lead roles in Shakespeare in the Park productions, and I understudied a Broadway show. I did regional theater in Baltimore, did a play out here at Mark Taper Forum, then started to do more off-Broadway stuff in New York, and then got my first sort of big Broadway job. I played the MC in Cabaret for...
Because you can sing. It's the dark. That's the dark secret of Michael C. Hall. He can sing.
It's my light passenger. And I did that for like 16 months. Took a month off to do this other workshop of something, and then the other month I took off was to shoot the pilot of 6 Feet Under.
Right.
And so that brought me out here, and I was going back and forth for the 5 years we did that, and then it ended.
David Fisher.
Yes, David Fisher.
Another dark secret with that guy at the beginning. Not that dark, but it was secret.
He had a different kind of dark passenger. That he fessed up about early on, but he maintained some sort of internal struggle with. And I can't get away from dead bodies. I can't get away from conflict.
Dead people talking to you.
Internalized negative father energy. All of it. It's just all, and it all has happened here at Sunset Gower.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah. So I'll be, when I come back for season 8, it will be my 13th consecutive year shooting a TV show here.
Oh my goodness.
They actually did a documentary about Sunset Gower, and they interviewed me for it and told me that I think me and Rita Hayworth have have the most years here, which is great because she's great.
She's fantastic.
You know,
you and Rita. There you go. That's a little nice secret tidbit about Rita Hayworth and Michael C. Hall. I like it.
Yeah, I hope that's not a spoiler for the documentary people. Sorry,
it's okay. So 6 Feet Under. That's where Scott Buck was on that also. He's
that's
our
right.
showrunner.
That's right. Scott Buck came on. I feel like in our second season.
That's right.
And he wrote Outright, one of the sort of big departure episodes on 6 Feet Under when David is abducted. That's my dog.
Yes.
And almost killed.
Did crack, right?
Yeah, did crack. Pooped in an alley.
Carjacked.
Instant Stockholm syndrome.
It was like 40 minutes of just David Fisher.
And it was kind of divisive. I mean, some people liked it and other people were like, they felt like they were abducted as well because the show always went from storyline to storyline to storyline, but that one kind of just...
They were wrong.
They were wrong.
That's right. It was great.
But I feel like every time Scott writes an episode outright, I end up in a van with somebody. I'm not even kidding. It's like, I don't know if it's
I think
something
you're right.
conscious he does, but one way or another, I end up in a van.
There's a lot of, he had some, you should be lucky it's the van. He's got other things that ends up in his episodes, like in Rome and whatnot. No,
it could be worse. David getting abducted energy, there's this fantasy that he has in a church where he turns the tables on his abductor and he puts a gun to his head and pulls the trigger and then he wakes out of the fantasy. And sometimes I feel like that was like when Dexter was born, even though it was before I had any idea that Dexter was on the horizon.
And then you got on Dexter.
Yeah.
Thank God, man.
Yeah, great. I moved back to New York after 6 Feet Under thinking I would, start exploring opportunities on stage again and try to crack into the film side of things. And it became pretty clear that a lot of people's imaginations began and ended with David Fisher. And
it's pretty iconic.
Yeah, and that they just thought that's who I was. And then Dexter came along. I saw the pilot, or read the pilot script a few times, read the book, met with the powers that be at the time, Michael Cuesta, who had directed on 6 Feet Under and was thankfully in my corner, and Bob Greenblatt too.
Yeah.
And initially it was like, no, I don't want to do another TV show, an open-ended commitment to this crazy character. I can't. And then I thought, what am I? I'm not a jerk. I mean, I'm definitely doing this.
I remember seeing, I was writing on a show, E-Ring, back then, and someone had brought in the Dexter pilot, and we were watching it, and it was a testament to your skills here. About 10, 15 minutes in, it was me and Lauren Gussis. We both wrote on that. We're watching it, and suddenly Lauren leans over and she goes, "That's David Fisher."
Oh, wow.
That's Michael C. Hall. Oh, my gosh. And it didn't even see it. And that's when we were still watching that show. So, yeah, just a complete departure from who that guy was.
Sometimes it felt like Dexter's first victim was David Fisher. And now everybody thinks I'm a serial killer. But a nice one.
A nice one.
Yeah.
I've heard you say that people come up to you and say, "Would you take care of this person?"
Yeah, I've got some people who you could totally, I don't do that. I've done enough research.
Not my thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 11, man. This was this is another big departure for Dexter.
Yeah, I mean, this season has been great because every episode has felt in some way that it's breaking some new ground for the character.
Yeah, let's talk about the season a little bit.
The show. Well, the landscape has fundamentally changed now that Deb knows, and Dexter has to sort of frame that relationship for himself. And I like initially that. We're never going to see Dexter defend himself in a courtroom, but you do see him one-on-one with Deb make no real apology for how he's been operating. And he's completely ready to staunchly defend himself.
And manipulate.
I think the show has always moved towards, Dexter becoming more human or at least experiencing himself in more human ways or simulating more convincingly human. I like that there's some ambiguity there, but the humanity that he displays in the 7th season is a bit dicier, darker, more manipulative, justifiably paranoid, self-serving to the nth degree. And so that's been fun.
Yeah. It's I love watching the moments when you tell these sort of truths, but they're not entirely true.
Yeah. I mean, Dexter's always relished from the beginning an opportunity to covertly reveal himself, to say something that really speaks to the deepest, darkest parts of him, but the listener has no idea that that's what he's doing.
Though Deb does, though, now.
But now it's everything is sort of flipped inside out. And it's I can't, believe the good fortune. Working on a show this long is one thing, but being in the 7th season and feeling genuinely like it's completely fresh and new and
we felt reinvigorated.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Jinx.
What was that scene? There was that one moment, I forget what episode it was, but it was after Deborah, you're laying in bed with Hannah, right? I think it was
she
6. Calls. And it's like, this is the most beautiful moment. You found this girl, you can't believe it. You have this look on your face as you look at Hannah.
Yeah.
And then you get this call, which is arguably something else you've been wanting your whole life.
Yeah.
For Deb to be involved.
Yeah.
Say,
just not her.
Not her.
Not the girl who's sleeping on my shoulder.
And the next episode, then you I guess that's one of my favorite half truths this season is when you say to her that what is it that I don't want you to go down this path.
Yeah,
and it's the truth, but it's a lie.
Yeah, it's a convenient truth.
Yeah.
Because
what do you feel like as the conduit for Dexter Morgan that if she had called up and said, "Hey, can you take care of blah blah killer?"
Yeah. Well, the whole course of the season and the relationship and how they're negotiating that information would be very different if she had named any other worthy victim. You know, he would have said, "Great, okay, now we're cooking with gas. Let's do this." Take out
beautiful times in Dexter's life.
Yeah,
full acceptance.
Yeah, but doesn't work out that way. Yeah, it's always going to dark places and simulating serial murder is always, kind of, I don't know, does a number on you to some degree. But I would say this season, more than any other, has been accompanied by a sort of weightiness and just Dexter can't deny that who he is really affecting all the people he supposedly cares about or loves or relationships that he cultivates, and it's heavy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's still a testament to you and everybody on set that it is still very funny at times, like at the most unexpected moments.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it needs to be more than ever, you know, because it's so dire. On the one hand, I think giving people an opportunity to kind of release and laugh is key.
Yeah. So 11. You've made this this big transition. Well, let's talk about 10, I guess, first.
Okay.
10 was there's no more dark passenger. It's been the chipping away for a long time, this idea of a dark passenger.
Yeah, and I think, challenged in the way that he is by Hannah to dismiss this, construct where he lays it on the dark passenger, this responsibility for his compulsion and indulging in it, is a watershed moment, and I don't think the dark passenger really doesn't exist. Dexter's just much less compartmentalized,
right,
and more integrated. And I think what's tough is he's discovering that these things don't really integrate that well.
Yeah,
his appetite for human connection and his indulgence and his
end it.
And it's a mess. But
which is humanity.
Yeah.
No longer a neat monster.
No, he's a very messy. He was a very neat monster, and now he's a real mess of a human. But I think that final moment, "I love you," and I love that Dexter doesn't say "I love you too." He says, "I think I love you too," which is pretty classic.
I feel like every guy with that, I know those connecting moments.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think the things that Dexter has always pointed to that make him uniquely monstrous or inauthentic are the things that are as relatable as anything else. Like we can all relate to that.
I think I do too.
I think I love you too. I'm comfortable saying that I think that.
And Hannah's so perfect for Dexter that she understands it and she gets it.
Yeah, man.
Not offended.
No, she really she doesn't blink in the face of his darkness or inadequacy.
Yeah.
You know, she's a real dream girl, except
Except
not.
for
Yeah.
the killing the sister.
Yeah.
The attempt on the sister. Part.
Yeah. Nightmare Girl,
Which
is
I
what
feel like you
happens in
understand.
11.
Yeah. I feel like everyone, it's one of those moments where everyone's going to be very conflicted because on the one hand, you completely understand. Hannah laid out the rules of the game.
Yeah.
If something threatens me,
Yeah.
I'm going to get rid of it. And not in the same way that Dexter does. No malice, no anger is involved with it. It's just like, I want to live my life.
Right.
Because she had this horrible moment at the beginning,
Right.
you know, when she was 15 years old.
Right.
And it's very fun to watch her bounce off of Dexter.
Yeah.
As he finds his life.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I feel like the women in Dexter's life, Lila, Lumen, not so much Deb because she's more maybe integral.
Right.
Hannah, but they all sort of dance around in his blind spots, you know.
Yeah.
He thinks he's sort of going toe to toe, but he's really just like being led by the nose. And I think, it's a huge episode. We see him fantasizing about the future.
Which we've never
Yeah,
seen.
and as I've heard you know, more than 4 days ahead, he's probably
At the most.
yeah, that's about as far as he goes. So the fact that he
I know that because I've
imagines
seen
it-
in your fridge, in Dexter's fridge. It's
Yeah.
only like about 4 days worth of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. He is managing to see a light, and it's interesting that included in that fantasy, he's still killing people.
Yeah.
But he's doing it in a way that's you know, pristine and without conflict and integrated.
It's like he goes to work, comes home.
Yeah.
She's like, "Hey, how's
she
your kill?"
gets it. Yeah,
It was like the Flintstones episode.
yeah.
It's like the Flintstones. He goes to work, he goes to the thing, he walks in the door, she gives him a kiss, there's some food.
Yeah.
How's
yeah.
your kill? There's some blood on your cheek. Let me wipe that off.
We didn't see the pet tiger.
No.
But
cut that.
But yeah, I mean, it's a heartbreaking episode, you know, and I think that final moment, I think experiences such a conflicting emotions regarding Hannah. He's still in love with her, but he's furious at her, and yet he understands what she's done.
Because anybody else, that girl would be dead. If anybody else did that to Deb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Deader than dead.
And then with Deb, he's you know, respects her need to be who she needs to be, and but on the other hand, and craves a connection with her. You know, what he gets with Hannah is something that he can't get with Deb, but I think he fundamentally craves with her. You know, because she's the one who was there from the beginning, and he craves an understanding that she can't quite give him. But when he gives her up in the end, and Deb is there, you know, there was a sense on the page that he was like, okay, I've made my decision, and Deb, I'm doing what we've agreed is right, and there, you know, there is a bottom line, and your safety is paramount. But there was a sense of, why couldn't you just let me have her?
Yes. Yes.
You know,
on screen. Yes.
yeah,
especially,
and the, you know, the answer is tied to Deb's own sort of complicated feelings about her brother, and her own sense of frustrated justice. I mean, she's ignoring his crimes, and she wants to prosecute somebody.
Yeah.
So it's a mess.
It's a beautiful mess.
Yeah.
It's great, and it's. I think people are going to be very conflicted about Dexter for one of the first times in a long time because. There's going to be I think there's a lot of people that wish that Dexter and Hannah could have just run off to Argentina together. Right. Why?
Well, we're sort of inspiring in the audience the same fantasy that it's starting to exist in Dexter.
Yes.
And,
yeah. And so I think people are going to be deliciously upset that Dexter's like a Judas in some senses. You know, there's like this final kiss in a garden.
Yeah.
And then here comes Deb to take her away. And, and he's doing something that's right.
Yeah. And it's I know. He
So
finally
weird.
does something right, and
and we're conflicted.
Yeah, that's not the Dexter we love.
Yeah.
What's sad, you know, if he were able to disappear, and not at least as he says it, maintain his commitment to his son, his sister, his life, things would probably be better. You know, the really sad thing about Dexter, I mean, the tragic thing maybe is it's not really his indulgence in his compulsion that gets him into trouble. It's his entertaining the idea that he could have a human life.
Yes.
And the more he does that, the more it affects and infects the people around him. And it's kind of heartbreaking. It's a cautionary tale. If you're going to kill people, just do that.
Be one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at Dexter season 1, you don't get a feeling that he is necessarily unhappy. He's sort of amused by everything around him.
Yeah, exactly. It's all under his control. No one is implicated at that point.
Killing's a game a little bit.
It's a game.
Brother.
I mean, when really once the ice truck killer hits the scene, whatever Dexter's life was starts to unravel.
Yes.
Then
that's that tiny bit of humanity
when he's
to
like,
connect.
I want to play, but he's been playing by himself, and now he wants to play with someone else. But the ice truck killer's emergence is the first time that Dexter's sort of unconscious appetite for human connection is exploited.
Right.
And
then what's her face?
Downhill ever since.
Lila. After
Lila.
that, Lila becomes like, oh, sex is fun.
Yeah.
A little bit of that.
Yeah.
Rita.
Miguel Prado.
Yeah. I can have a friend.
I can have a friend whose brother I killed.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah. It's he's a real magnet for
people.
Yeah.
Not really, but yeah.
But yeah, oh man, it's
and Lithgow.
It's heartbreaking. Oh, John Lithgow.
Yeah.
I mean, he is Trinity was as formidable a foe as Dexter will ever face in terms of being, like, up to that point, the most prolific serial killer, a guy who did successfully maintain a compartmentalized life,
right.
A weird role model. But it was his indulgence in that relationship that really ended Rita's life.
Yeah.
And I think Dexter's been reeling in some way ever since then.
So for sure, season 5, with that's trying to find a little atonement.
Right.
Out of Lumen.
Yeah.
And then leading us into 6 and 7.
Yeah.
7 especially, though. I mean, it is all on the table. Almost every episode. Every episode, it really is. Yeah.
And what's so satisfying, too, is that we're sort of reaching back to Dexter's origin story, or the DNA that was implanted in the first season, with callbacks to certain story threads, or there are even some flashback elements that happen in the season that have happened up to this point, and maybe will happen.
I think people
again.
will enjoy what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, in the final episode. And that's been really satisfying, a sense of, like, it coming full circle, and we're able to draw upon everything that we've done up to this point. It's not a self-contained little thing. It's a part of a greater whole in terms of the story we're telling now, and that feels good.
Yeah, there's on this end up here in the writers area, we've felt very invigorated knowing that there is this end game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's not this need to just have like a self-compartmentalized season,
Right.
You know, where Dexter learns something, but things don't really move forward,
Right.
which is fun.
But
this is much more
everything's
risky and fun.
Everything's resolved, and
Yeah.
I think 6 ends with a real messy situation, and
It's very exciting and scary for us. Yeah.
and it doesn't get better.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's no safe haven for Dexter. Everywhere he steps in the 7th season, it's trouble. There's, on all fronts, things are precarious, and
Can we talk about this moment? This is in 11 when you're about to kill Estrada.
Yeah.
The guy that's responsible for the death of your mother, the reason for everything. To
Yeah,
a certain
I
extent.
mean, I think even more than Trinity, when he
Yes.
kills Estrada or imagines killing Estrada, I think there's some fantasy that maybe this will clean the slate for me. Maybe I'll be cured of my compulsion.
Yeah.
We'll talk about coming full circle, but go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think Dexter? That's where I was going. Do you think that there was a hope in Dexter that suddenly this would all snap off?
I think
or?
in that scene, obviously he doesn't get to do the deed there, but he sort of entertains in Estrada's presence, like, who will I be when you're gone? What's it going to be like? And I think there's some, in spite of the fact that we saw him flash forward to a fantasy that had him killing people, I think he does fantasize that, in spite of his claim that he'll never be over his compulsion, I think he does fantasize being somewhat relieved of it.
It's a little fearful too, I imagine. Like, he defines himself by these 4 things, but 2 or 3 things in his life.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah. Who are you without? Yeah.
Maybe we'll never know.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe we'll find out in season 8. I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah, it's gonna be fun though.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how this all goes down. But it's nice. There are a lot of spinning plates, but it's nice to be at a place where they can start to really just fall and shatter on the floor.
There's gonna be a lot of shattering.
Yeah,
that's for this Dexter having a conscience.
Mm-hmm.
That's whole new territory because one of my favorite answers for Dexter is, "Oh."
Yeah.
And now with a conscience, feelings are real and guilt is happening, and not in the normal places,
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. This guy continues to do what he does.
Right. Because I don't think he'll ever. It's hard to believe that Dexter would ever really feel bad for killing that choir master or killing.
Yeah, I don't think he. Yeah, I don't think.
I
I don't think he has any misgivings about his, straight up code fitting victims.
Right.
But it's the places where he's colored outside the lines and that are starting to nag at him,
like Deb and like Rita.
Mm-hmm. And
Dokes, no, yes or no? What do you feel? We all in the room. We all have different ideas about Dexter's feelings about guilt or no guilt about people like that.
Yeah, well, I think it happened in a time where he was perhaps better able to compartmentalize, but I think there's residue. Anything that happened that wasn't sort of in sync with his mission statement about who he is and how he does things is insidious and on some level gnaws at his... he initially says he's not capable of being authentic. The only thing authentic about him is the fact that he has a code he lives by. And now, as he's experiencing himself in more authentic ways, that code he's played fast and loose with it. Yeah. He's dismissed it for periods of time. And that's doing him in.
People like Clint, like that killing someone out of love when he killed Hannah's father.
Yeah.
Or when Dexter did, sorry.
Yeah. And that's the 10th episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny watching that. I mean, if you watch it, we think that Dexter's going to kill the arsonist.
Right.
But I think he is as in a sort of wound up, tense place at the top of that episode as we've ever seen him. And when Clint comes on the scene, Dexter immediately is like, just give me a reason. I am going to kill you.
No, I remember I guess I wasn't there on set. Jace was down there because he co-wrote that thing also. But on scripted, there's that moment in the greenhouse after
where I shove him.
And the script was just like shove him,
right.
And you were like, you had a different idea, which was brilliant, by the way.
Well, I mean, I just thought it should be less, brush up or dust up in a bar or something.
Not like dudes. Yeah,
just straight for the throat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when we saw it, we were like, oh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
It's so cool. This hand at the throat and the change of the voice and
right. Well, it was Hannah had that line in the scene the next morning. She's like, that voice, So I was like, well, I guess I gotta.
That was a
do
dark
something.
Messenger. But that was a weird, different kind of kill because that guy in the code didn't fit it at all.
Well, he's also, I think that's connected to his own father issues too. I mean, Hannah
Right.
is haunted by her own father
Right.
and her own father's deficiencies. And
very kind.
and you know, Dexter's dad was more attentive, but I think he has an increasing sense that Harry, on the one hand, took care of him and cultivated something in him, but on the other hand, abused him.
Yeah.
And so there's some connection to the Hannah daddy kill that's linked to Dexter's own conflicted relationship to his internalized father, I think.
Right. Who's always on the edges, always popping
Yeah,
up
stop
in the weirdest
riding
places.
me, Dad. Yeah.
Yeah, you're very different. It's not quite dark passenger Dexter voice when you're talking to father to
Right.
Harry.
Right.
It's a weird.
It's
partly
tricky.
human, partly angry, partly.
Yeah, you know,
You
we
work that out, yeah.
we try not to be too rigid about the rules that
Right.
dictate that relationship or how we play those scenes, just in nuts and bolts ways in terms of like, are we looking at each other? Can we
Right.
touch one another? You know, but and sometimes we're basically giving information.
We're sure.
we're
It's a
but-
voiceover trick.
yeah,
in some ways.
Yeah, but we try to dramatize them without going too far, and I feel like there's, you know, sometimes they're really on the same page and they're fueling each other's fire, and sometimes it's really antagonistic.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that, like relationships in life, whether they're with real people or internalized people, that they're one thing at one moment and one thing at another. So it's nice that we don't feel backed into any corner in terms of that dynamic. But
Do you
yeah.
feel, you as Michael C. Hall, do you feel that Harry Morgan made a mistake? Definitely not for the show. Thank God he made that mistake. But,
I think we're going to find out more about that. And, you know, maybe some more information to allow audiences to make their decisions about that. But I think he...
it's a weird thing about being a dad. You just don't know in the
I
moment.
think he lived through his kid,
Yeah.
you know, in a way that was less than 2012 healthy, you know. But I
Oprah
guess
would have had a field day.
we all do that. But yeah, I mean, I think the person who Dexter became was as much had as much to do with Harry as it did with Dexter,
Yeah.
in terms of Harry being a frustrated vigilante himself. I mean, there's a reason why this show is popular with people in law enforcement.
It is. What was that? There's the Miami Homicide Show. I forget the name of it. That's on one of the channels.
CSI Miami?
No. There's one. There's a reality TV one.
Oh.
48 Hours.
Right.
And so they go all over the city. They go in all sorts of different cities all over America, and invariably you will see a Dexter hat.
Yeah.
Sitting at a homicide detective's desk.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. If all else fails,
There's Dexter. Yeah. that's
it
what
allows you to
do.
let it go. If you like don't solve a case, you're like, Dexter will do it.
Speaking of being killed,
Yes.
you killed me in episode 11.
I
It was
did.
Let me tell you.
Was it terrifying?
It was first of all, being wrapped in plastic is a whole different sort of experience.
It's not as fun in reality.
yeah, you're immobilized. I heard
It's torture.
because was it 6? It was like 6. The guy was wrapped for 6 hours. I heard on a table.
Lithgow, I think, was on the table as long as anybody because we
Oh,
had that
my goodness.
incredibly
Oh, that's right.
complicated scene with the train set, and that was like
right.
5-page dialogue scene. I think he actually has the record and probably did it with the most sort of equanimity and he was fine. But yeah, there have been times. There was a guy in the 5th season that I put on the table with Lumen.
Yeah.
And he was literally cursing me. He was like, I hate you. I hate your show. I hate this. I can't believe. And it is, I mean, it gets to people.
It does. I had like a horrible nightmare the next night.
Yeah,
It's
that's
that
great.
moment when you like thumped my forehead.
Yeah.
It was
the
great.
Dexter, the hand of God, sort of, I am your
There's nothing you can do.
executioner. There's nothing you can do.
But it's definitely a different inside view on this show than I've ever had in my entire life.
Right.
It's very fun. Thanks for killing me.
I liked your. I haven't seen the final cut of that, but what I did see, just your wide-eyed, like, oh, here I go. This is good.
Thanks, man. How about that? Hey, thanks for coming in. This has been an incredible season. It's been an honor to work with you all these years.
Thank you.
And season 7, you've been knocking it out of the park almost every week. No,
almost every week. No, you said almost. It's okay. There was that one.
There's that one moment in that one scene with the thing. Remember outside?
Oh yeah. No, it haunts me.
Over.
Yeah.
Other than that, though.
Yeah.
And you seem to have been enjoying this a bit more. The challenge of it all.
Yeah. I mean, it really feels not brand new.
Never will feel brand new.
Well, but in a good way. I mean, like. It feels like we're being asked to draw upon all the work we've done up to this point, and it's really rich as a result. And yeah, it's been fun.
It's been really fun. Thanks so much for coming in.
Sure thing,
Michael C. Hall. Here we are once again, sitting here with Scott Buck.
Hello.
And the writers of episode 710 and our penultimate final Q&A. I guess not penultimate final, but fancy our word. Penultimate Q&A for season 7. Outside of any questions you tweet me my way after the episode. So the writers here, it's me, Scott Reynolds, Jace Richdale.
Hello.
That's the voice of Jace Richdale. And Lauren Gussis.
Hi.
Hello. How you doing, Lauren?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I understand after the last podcast that you're that you had for your Q&A that your husband had some tips for you on how to be better.
Totally. He was so helpful.
Was he? Are you going to enact any of those tips today?
I don't know. We'll see. He told me that I should be less nervous and more specific.
More specific.
So I'm specifically telling you the tips that he gave me.
Anything else? Nothing else? No?
No, those were the big ones.
Those are pretty big.
He had huge compliments for you, though.
Well, he and I, we like each other. Not that he doesn't like you.
No, of course. No, but I think in another lifetime, maybe, the two of you.
That'd be a weird lifetime.
I don't want to be in that lifetime.
It's oddly me neither. So, Jace, hey.
Hey.
So you come out of The Simpsons.
I do.
Yeah. How do you go from Simpsons and that sort of comedy into hour-long dark
mostly
comedy
just straight
serial
down
killing?
Pico Boulevard to Fox. I just had done comedy for years, and The Simpsons was sort of the pinnacle of that experience, and it was great, and it was kind of hard to match that. And I was getting kind of bored with them. I left The Simpsons, did another animated show, actually with Scott
Buck, right? You guys have a history of hanging out in clubs together.
Oh yeah.
Standing in the back corner, bobbing your heads.
That's a lifetime I would like to be a part of.
So we worked on this show called The Oblongs together, and then when that went down the tubes, Scott went on to do 6 Feet Under and went into sort of the drama world, and I did a few more years of comedy and was getting kind of bored with it, and I wrote a play that was kind of dramatic and was just kind of trying to forge my way into doing drama. I got on a drama show on CBS that was going the way of most new shows, again down the tubes, and Scott sort of called out of the blue and said that there was an opening. He had just taken over Dexter, and there was an opening, and luckily, did I have any material? And luckily, this play passed muster with him and with Sarah Colleton and John Goldwyn and the people at Showtime, and here I am.
And we love it.
Thank you.
It's been good.
We love it.
It's great.
It's very funny to have this guy's voice in the room. So let's talk about episode 710 for just a minute before we get into the questions from everybody on Facebook and Twitter. The question a lot of people were asking about the dark passenger. It's one of those terms that we all get lulled into believing is a real thing, but when you stop down and really think about it, it's pretty damn strange. And in the dark whatever, we watch Dexter just toss it out the window and then go off and kill Clint out of love for Hannah. So I guess the question everybody was asking is, how did we come to this moment in Dexter's life, and why now?
I think very early on in the show, he sort of obliquely refers to his dark passenger. And then from there, it just seemed to sort of take on a life of its own and become bigger and bigger until the point that we realized we realized it didn't exist, and it seemed like it was time for Dexter in his growth towards maturity to realize that it doesn't exist as well, that it's not a different person inside of him, but it's just a part of him itself.
It's part of like sort of growing up. Like I've got kids, and they're very much, one of them is at a point where he's starting to take responsibility for himself, which usually happens like, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. But
Right. So for Dexter,
natural.
it felt like it was time for him to stop projecting onto something else. And
Blaming
I think,
something else.
Yeah, and I think, it was interesting from a very early point in time. We kind of looked at Dexter as, Dexter's dark passenger is kind of like the monkey on his back, like in the addict metaphor, And I think in terms of maturing and becoming a whole person, it was important for him to integrate both sides of himself. And on some level, that's beautiful, and on some level, for Dexter, that's really dangerous.
Could you be more specific? No.
She seemed nervous.
You guys are the best. You're the best.
So let's go to the questions from the fans on Facebook and Twitter. We got Amrit on Facebook asks, "Hey guys, why make Dexter acknowledge that there is no dark passenger and that it's just his choice to kill? It made me feel like he realized he likes killing and can go without considering Harry's codes now." Sort of the same thing a little bit there, but
it's not related to the code, really. I mean, he does do a code out. He does do a killing outside of his code, but I think it's very dangerous territory for Dexter to simply toss away the code, and I don't think that's something he's really considering at this point.
But it is pretty telling that the first kill he does is something he does for someone else.
Sure.
Well,
she sort of, I'm sorry.
Go ahead now.
Kind of opens him up to that possibility about the dark passenger, and I think it's that she's a strong influence on him, kind of moving, feeling like he doesn't necessarily have to follow the code.
But I think on some level, it's interesting that he comes from a good impulse. Like the kill that he does comes from a good place as opposed to a bad place, even though it's
not pissed at anybody.
It's
not
dangerous
anger.
in terms of the slippery slope of his
He was
darkness.
a little pissed at him.
He was a little pissed.
But it comes from like a love place as opposed to a dark, violent place, which I think is really interesting. But I think, for several seasons ago, Dexter decided that it wasn't Harry's code anymore. It was his code.
Right.
Because he had adopted it for his own. He had lived it and breathed it for so long that it became his.
Yeah.
And so because it's so much a part of him, I think taking responsibility for himself doesn't mean he throws that away because it's his.
Yeah.
If it were still Harry's, I think it'd be another story.
In Christian terms, it's sort of like there's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law.
Right.
And Dexter's definitely falling under the spirit of the law. Yeah. Jura on Facebook asks, this is sort of like if we had Jessica Kinder here, we'd have a really good answer, but we'd have to settle for us. The color and structure of Hannah's dollhouse look very similar to the house she lives in. Was that a play in her childhood, perhaps? Was this a conscious decision?
No, actually, it was just happy circumstances. We had told Jessica early on that we should be on the lookout for a really nice dollhouse, and they found one, and that is just happened to be what it was.
Initially, when we were talking about the dollhouse, too, it was sort of tied into Hannah's wish of this sort of perfect life. And
yeah, I think it was.
away.
It sort of took a different, darker turn, but originally we had imagined that she had kept this dollhouse because it sort of symbolized the life that she wished she could have had, but never did.
Yeah. Mayra on Facebook asks, "Is Dexter letting go of the code too?" She was very worried. Scott Buck
No.
scowled and shook his head.
I think, Dexter has always had his give and take with the code where he struggles with it, but always returns to it more strongly than ever, usually.
Yeah.
I mean, on some level, I think the code serves as his conscience, and he can disassociate from that, too, as much as he wants. But at some point, he may have to take responsibility for the fact that he does have a conscience, too.
Right.
But, that
People who deserve it, who deserve to die, the things that they've done.
So it's, it's his. Again, it's his.
Barrett on Facebook asks, or says, "Last night was awesome." Yeah, I like that.
Thank you.
I feel like anything can happen and anyone can go at any time, especially now with no dark passenger. Do you think everyone has a dark passenger? What about a light passenger, something that drives people to do good or believes they are doing good? Jace Richdale.
That sounds completely insane. No, I don't know. I guess everybody has a goodness and I mean light and darkness in them.
Right.
I mean I would guess.
Do you?
A lot, yeah.
A lot of both. I would say. Yeah. Pete at Twitter asks, "At what point was LaGuerta working out Dex was the Bay Harbor butcher?" Wait, let me read that again. At what point was LaGuerta working out that Dexter was the Bay Harbor butcher planned? Did I say it wrong again? At what point?
I understand the question.
Has it always been in mind since season 2?
No, not at all. But as we began to plan out this season, that was part and parcel with the whole concept of what this season would be about. That from the very first episode, she would start to realize something odd was going on here.
Yeah, and you know, from the, I mean, on a sort of meta spiritual level, Dexter has always wanted to be known. It's, you know, from the end of
perhaps
season.
Perhaps not in this way.
Not by LaGuerta necessarily.
But since season 1, LaGuerta has wanted to know Dexter.
Taylor Austin Mai at Twitter asks, did Hannah know that Dexter actually killed her dad? I got this vibe that she did after he admitted she was right. Was that intended? It's very vague.
I think we played it that way on purpose because I think she understood what Dexter did, but because these two have such a connection that it just wasn't something that needed to be discussed. I don't think she needed to ask that question.
And I think it offers her some space for denial.
Yeah.
If there's any part of her that doesn't want that to be true, there's some space because he didn't actually say it
It
for
is
her
her
to
dad.
live in the gray a little bit.
Makes sense.
Kathy JCH at Twitter asks, Miami Metro investigated the Butcher case. They should have known Jimenez rented the cabin. Why is Matthew surprised now? Remember at that moment when he realizes Jimenez owned that cabin that blew up that Dokes was in?
Mm-hmm.
So
the case was already solved, though. With Dokes' death, there was really no investigation needed so far.
Right. It was just a fact.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, only Matthews knew that back story of Dexter.
Right.
Who's Matthews? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm the new writer. I'm just catching up.
All right. Well, there you go. Thanks for answering these questions. That was the end of the 11th Dexter Wrap-Up podcast. We only got one more to go, and it's a doozy. Would you guys agree? It's pretty good. Scott Buck writes it with Tim Shaw.
I wouldn't use that filthy language, but I mean, yeah, I think it's good.
If you got some questions after watching episode 711, do you see what I... Oh, no, you didn't write this next one. Do you see what I see? Oh, you did write the next one. I'm just going to stop talking. No, I got to keep talking. You can get them answered by the writers Manny Cotto and Wendy West, as well as by showrunner Scott Buck. And because that will be our final podcast of season 7, rest assured we will ask some questions about the finale, too. So you can post up your questions for that episode on facebook.com/Dexter. Or if you're into Twitter, then hit us up at twitter.com/SHO_Dexter. But put hashtag Dexter Wrap Up with your question. Do it Monday night at the latest. We compile them Tuesday morning, pick the best of the bunch, and ask away on the podcast. I want to thank Michael C. Hall, Dexter himself, for taking time out to talk about all things Dexter. And if anybody knows about the Morgans, it's that guy. I also want to thank, of course, Rob Galuzzo, a.k.a. Rob G., the producer sound guy for the podcast. He's good people. I'm Scott Reynolds, one of the writers here on the show. You can find me on Twitter at JScottAmy. I answer questions about the show, so find me. Catch us next week when our guest will be... Oh, yeah, I'm not going to tell you. But I'll post up a picture of our guest on my Twitter account at the end of the West Coast feed. I think everyone will be very pleased. That's it. That's the end. But don't worry. It's going to happen again and again. It has to happen. Have a good week.